Salve Discipuli. Today's lesson is on deponent verbs. It is chapter 8 in volume 2 for Latin for the New Millennium. And deponent verbs are a very special subset of irregular verbs. For the most part, they have passive forms, but they only translate actively. So you already know the endings because you already know the passive forms for the various conjugations. Just like any old verb, there can be any conjugation. They follow its conjugations form in the passive. So really you already know the forms for the deponent. You just now need to learn which verbs are deponent so you know to translate them actively. Unlike other verbs, they only have three principal parts. The first principal part is the first person singular, present indicative. I say present indicative because, of course, you don't want to call them passive because they don't translate passively, and you don't want to call them active because they don't have active forms. So you can either say the present indicative or the present deponent indicative. There you go. Their second principal part is the present infinitive, and their third principal part is the third person singular, perfect indicative. Okay, I have an example here of a a deponent verb from each of the conjugations. So hortor, hortārī is first conjugation. Again, you can tell what conjugation they're in based on their present infinitive. So if they have a present infinitive that would be the present passive infinitive for the first conjugation verbs, then you have a first conjugation deponent. This means to encourage. Fateor, fatērī means to confess, second conjugation. Loquor, loquī, third conjugation, it means to speak, to talk. Patior, patī means to suffer or to endure. And mōlior, mōlīrī, means to build. Okay, so there are no new forms to learn. Yay! Except for the imperative. Boo! So you need to know what the imperative of the deponent verbs look like. The singular imperative looks like the non-existent present active infinitive. So if this verb were to have a present active infinitive, which it doesn't, but if it were, it would look like this, hortārī, and that is the singular imperative urge. The plural looks like the second person plural present indicative, so that mini ending, and that is the plural to urge. So hortāmini also means the imperative urge. Okay, so be careful with the participles and the infinitives. The future participle forms like the future active participle for other verbs, and it has active meanings. So this is why I said up here, for the most part, they have passive forms but translate actively. This one has an active form. The perfect participle has a passive form, because the perfect passive participle, right? But it also translates actively. And the future infinitive looks like the future active infinitive for other verbs, and again, it has active meanings. Now, for the most part, the rest of this presentation is going through each of the conjugations with our paradigm verb, our example verb. So this is the part that's going to take you probably the most time to copy down. I do want you to copy them down. If for no other reason, then it gives you guys some good practice and a good review of the passive forms for all the verbs, because that's what the deponents use, are the passive forms. So as you can see here, hortor, hortārī, hortātus, sum. It's present indicative, hortor, hortāris, hortātor, hortāmor, hortāmini, hortāntor, but translates actively. I urge, you urge, he, she, it urges, we urge, y'all urge, they urge. Imperfect passive forms, translating actively, hortābar, I was urging. The future indicative, hortābor, I will urge. For the perfects, again, you're going to use the perfect passive form for other verbs, but they translate actively for these deponents. So, hortāta sum, I urged. Hortāta aram, I had urged. Hortāta aro, I will have urged. It's subjunctive forms like the like the passive subjunctive for other first conjugation verbs. So hortor, hortārīs, hortētor, hortāmor, hortāmini, hortēntor. Imperfect subjunctive, perfect subjunctive, pluperfect subjunctive. So you guys should pause the video and write all these down. I'm not going to go through each and every form orally. Okay, so present imperative, hortārī, urge, hortāmini, urge. The participles hortātus having urged, or hortātorus about to urge. And then it's three infinitives. Hortārī to urge, hortātum esse to have urged, hortātorum esse to be about to urge. Okay, so I go through this now for all the different conjugations. Patior, fatērī with that macron over the E in the second principal part is a second conjugation deponent, and here are the present indicative, imperfect, and future. I have the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. And again, you guys should be pausing the video to write down these forms. It's present and imperfect subjunctive, perfect, pluperfect subjunctive, and then getting to this last slide, the present imperative, fatērī, confess, fatemini, confess, so the singular and plural imperatives. Our participles, fassus having confess, or fassus about to confess. And then the infinitives, fatērī to confess, fassum esse to have confessed, fassorum esse to be about to confess. Okay, that brings us to our third conjugation. Loquor, loquī, locūtus sum. Again, our present, imperfect, and future indicative. Our perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect indicative. Our present subjunctive, imperfect subjunctive, perfect and pluperfect subjunctives. And now, this last slide, the present imperative, loquere, talk. Loquīmini, talk, so our present and plural imperatives. Locūtus having talked. Future participle, locūtorus about to talk. And then our infinitives, loquī to talk, locutum esse to have talked, locūtorum esse to be about to talk. Okay, third IO, patior, patī, passus sum in the present, imperfect, and future. If I can go back a couple slides, actually, I want to remind you guys of a quick thing. Remember that just like for the third conjugation passives, the only difference between the second person singular present indicative and the second person singular future indicative for the deponent verbs is this macron. So this E, if it's short, loqueris, you talk, and if it's long, loqueris, you will talk. So that's a thing to keep in mind. So we have the present, imperfect, and future of the third IL, the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect, the present subjunctive and the imperfect subjunctive, the perfect and the pluperfect subjunctive, and then our imperative, singular patērī, plural patimini, suffer. The participles, passus having suffered, or passoris about to suffer. And then the infinitives, patī, to suffer, passum esse, to have suffered, passorum esse, to be about to suffer. Okay, our last conjugation, mōlior, mōlīrī, mōlītus sum. So our present, imperfect, and future indicative. The perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect indicative. Present subjunctive, imperfect subjunctive, perfect and pluperfect subjunctive. And then our imperatives, singular mōlīrī, plural mōlīmini, build. The participles, mōlītus so the perfect participle, having built. Future participle, mōlīturus about to build. And then our infinitives, present mōlīrī, to build. Perfect mōlītum esse, to have built. Future mōlītorum esse, to be about to build. Okay, so I have some sample sentences here so you can see how to translate the deponent verb. Discipuli malai initium laboris vitare conabantur. So malai discipuli, bad students, were trying, vitare, to avoid, I know you guys don't know this verb, but to avoid the beginning of work. So it translates just like an active verb would translate, okay? It can take a direct object, as you can see, so these are weirdly transitive verbs. Yeah, and you just have to know which one of these verbs are deponents so that when you see the passive forms, you know to translate them actively. Okay. The second sentence, Vestra magistra candida, stultus facile non patitor. Your shining teacher, non patitor, does not suffer stultos, fools, facile, easily. That one might be autobiographical. And then this last sentence, I give you an example of the imperative. So arbitrare tibi. This looks like a present infinitive if a deponent would have a present infinitive, which it doesn't. Excuse me, an active infinitive. It has present infinitive, doesn't have an active infinitive. So think tibi for yourself. Okay, the last thing I want to tell you guys about are verbs that are called semi-deponent. And you have learned a couple of these throughout your vocabulary adventures in Latin these last couple of years. Semi-deponents are regular in the present system and deponent in the perfect system, meaning that they have active forms and passive forms, just like you would expect in the present, imperfect, and future. But then in the perfect system, the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect, they only have deponent forms. So audio, audere, ausus sum is one of them. So audio, I dare. But ausus sum is how you would say I dared. Okay? So let's look at the difference between these two sentences. Audio, I dare to live freely and happily. Okay? That's how you say it in the present. But if you wanted to make it perfect, you would have to go deponent in the perfect system. So ausus sum, I dared to live freely and happily. Okay. All right, that is the end of our presentation. I know this probably took you a long time to get through all these charts, so good job. But make sure you took your notes very well, and I will see you in class. Walete.